Be me anon, mid-30s, the quiet specialist who keeps messy systems looking stable for everyone else. Years in this place taught one simple rule: ship the work and avoid the theater, because theater never fixes outages. Most days were predictable, tickets moved, meetings ended, and the department felt boring in a healthy way. Old boss was blunt, practical, and allergic to vibe talk, so the team argued about facts instead of feelings. Output mattered, deadlines mattered, and nobody needed a manifesto to say, please don't break production. Comfortable rhythm lasted until the boss left, and the room got that weird new landlord silence overnight. Interim week stayed quiet, like everyone was holding their breath and hoping the next hire would be normal. Monday arrives. New head walks in early, already smiling like she rehearsed it in a mirror. Call her Renee, early 30s, confident posture, polished voice, and eyes that measure people fast. Introduction wasn't, "Hi, I'm your manager." It was, "Hi, I'm here to change what this team stands for." First slide in the kickoff deck said safety. Second said equity. Third said, we will correct historical imbalance. She said the word feminist like it was a leadership certification, not a personal belief. Everyone nodded because nodding is free and disagreement is expensive when a new boss is watching. My brain stayed practical. Does she understand the work, or does she understand the story about the work? Week 1 was one-on-ones, soft questions, careful listening, lots of thank you for sharing that. She asked what I wanted next, and I said more ownership on bigger projects, something that matched my experience. Renee smiled and said, ownership is important, but we also need to create space for voices that were overlooked. That "but" landed like a coin in my stomach because it sounded like a polite warning. Feedback style came up and I said I keep it direct, specific, and written down when it matters. Pen hovered in her notebook like I'd admitted to a bad habit, and she nodded a little too slowly. She said directness can feel unsafe when power dynamics exist, and I kept my face neutral. Second week brought meetings that weren't about shipping anything, but about how we show up together. New framework appeared, impact over intent, and nobody was allowed to ask who decides impact. Another slide appeared. Questions can be control, which sounded insane, yet everyone pretended it was normal. Guidelines followed: how to disagree without dominating, how to critique without centering male logic. Some lines were reasonable, others read like a rule book for making men speak in apology language. Hiring started immediately after, fast and targeted, like a list existed before she even arrived. 3 women joined in a month, all somehow connected to her network, all branded as culture multipliers. None of the men got fired, but the air shifted, like we were now the old furniture in a remodel. New hires got welcome posts and spotlight intros, and the existing guys got assigned onboarding duties. I got labeled stable and supportive, which is corporate code for we will use you as scaffolding. Renee launched a women-only leadership sync, sold as mentorship, scheduled during hours that mattered. Decisions started appearing after that sync, fully formed, already agreed, never discussed with a full team. Meetings became theater, alignment announced first, questions permitted only if they sounded like compliments. First time I asked for clarity, Renee smiled and praised curiosity like I was a child raising a hand. Second time I asked, she said my tone felt challenging and the room got quieter. Third time I asked, she said I was centering myself, and I realized the script had been written. Wanted to avoid tone traps, so questions moved into writing, because writing doesn't have a voice. Renee replied that written confrontation can feel aggressive too, and I nearly laughed out loud. Structure settled in. High visibility work went to her circle, high risk cleanup landed on my desk. Launches, demos, and strategy docs went to the women, while I got incidents, refactors, and forgotten glue work. Renee called it equitable development. Leadership called it progress, and I called it being turned into a spare tire. First real theft was casual, like she was moving chairs in a room, not careers in a department. Project I'd been leading got reassigned for growth opportunities, handed to a new hire named Tara. Tara was smart and eager, but still learning the landmines that come with complex ownership. Support role got assigned to me because allyship means making others successful without needing credit. Tara ran meetings, I answered the brutal questions, and Renee praised Tara's courage in front of stakeholders. When anything broke, Tara slid into my messages asking how to fix it quickly without making noise. Fixes happened because I don't let fires burn just to prove a point, and I still had professional pride. Renee later thanked me for staying in the background, like invisibility was a virtue instead of a demotion. Second reassignment hit harder because it was the kind of initiative that actually mattered to me. I proposed a big improvement, scoped it, wrote the plan, got buy-in, and scheduled the work sensibly. Renee called it a great idea and handed ownership to Jess, another woman from her growing inner circle. Jess messaged me privately, said she didn't ask for this, but refusing would look anti-women. Told her it wasn't her fault, and I'd help, because I wasn't here to punish peers for management politics. Project shipped, Jess got spotlighted. Renee gave a speech about uplifting women into ownership roles. My name stayed off the slide like a ghost did the work and vanished before the applause. Performance rubric changed soon after, and it turned the whole department into a stage. New categories appeared: inclusive collaboration, community care, amplification, psychological safety stewardship. Examples were basically instructions on how men should speak and how women should be perceived. Women showing confidence were leaders. Men showing confidence were intimidating. Women interrupting were passionate. Men interrupting were microaggressors who need reflection. Meetings became a careful dance where I measured every sentence like a controlled substance. Language got softer, more "I wonder," more "maybe," more "could we consider," less "this will break." Didn't matter, because the problem wasn't wording. The problem was that I still existed as a counterweight. New rituals appeared, rotating emotional check-ins, rotating note-taking, rotating gratitude rounds. Note-taking always landed on the men, justified as balancing invisible labor, which was funny in a dark way. Allyship commitments followed, basically lunchtime homework sessions for men about privilege and unlearning control. Skipping sessions would be recorded as resistance, so I attended a few and sat politely. Sessions were gentle, which made them creepier, like a velvet glove that still squeezes your throat. Renee used examples that sounded exactly like me without naming me. Some people prioritize efficiency over empathy. Women nodded, men stared at coffee, and everyone pretended this was growth instead of social conditioning. First truly absurd moment happened when a new hire presented a plan with obvious factual flaws. Math didn't add up, constraints got ignored, and the risks were not subjective at all. Waited for someone else to speak because I was tired of being the designated villain. Silence happened because nobody wanted to be seen as undermining a woman in a leadership moment. Asked a calm, clarifying question, just one, and Renee immediately said questions can feel like interrogation. She suggested I try curiosity without pressure, which made zero sense, yet everyone nodded anyway. Afterward, she messaged me that I had a pattern of challenging women, citing that single question. Asked for more examples, and she said listing incidents can re-traumatize people, so I should trust the feedback. Realize the trap, because you can't defend yourself against feelings that refuse to become facts. Started documenting everything quietly, not to win a fight, but to keep my sanity intact. Dates, assignments, ownership changes, messages, who said what, and what got ignored. Kept it private because announcing documentation would be labeled controlling behavior. Review season arrived, and the meeting felt like a courtroom without a judge. Renee praised my technical strength, reliability, and calming presence in crises, then pivoted hard. She said growth area was inclusive leadership by stepping back and letting others shine more. She said my need for clarity sometimes created tension, and tension can feel unsafe to the team. Asked for specifics again, and she said naming names is harmful, so I should reflect instead. Left the room feeling charged with a crime that had no statute, only vibes. After that, reassignment became blatant, like she stopped caring if I noticed. Anything with visibility went to her circle. Anything with risk went to me every single week. My wins got reframed as team outcomes, while women's wins got attached to their names in public channels. Even worse, failures got softened into learning moments for them and hardened into accountability moments for me. Department got quieter as men stopped offering ideas because ideas could be taken and you'd still be blamed later. Renee called the quiet healthy, like silence was consent and consent was culture. Big project arrives, high stakes, leadership watching, deadline not flexible, expectations heavy. Renee announced it like a historic moment, said it would prove our culture produces better outcomes. She said a woman must lead it for visibility, and she assigned Tara again, because symbolism mattered more than readiness. Stomach dropped, because Tara still leaned on me for basic political navigation, not just technical details. Scheduled a one-on-one with Renee, tried to stay calm, tried to stay factual, tried to stay adult. Suggested co-lead setup, Tara front-facing, me execution owner, so stakeholders get leadership and we still deliver. Renee smiled and said I was struggling to let go of control, and allyship requires trust in women leaders. She asked why I felt threatened by women's growth, and I said I was worried about delivery. Renee said worry can be a mask for bias, and she wanted me to reflect on that privately. Left the room knowing no real conversation existed inside her system, only compliance or guilt. Tara ran kickoff meetings with bright energy, and stakeholders loved her tone and optimism. The plan looked pretty, but it ignored constraints that would bite hard later, like physics waiting patiently. Flag those constraints politely in writing, with data, options, and clear next steps to mitigate risk. Renee replied in the group thread, thanking me for passion and asking me not to derail with worst-case thinking. Heart emojis appeared because nothing says "we are professionals" like emoticons under a risk note. Schedule slipped week by week, but status stayed green because green was a mood, not a measurement. Tasks got marked done without real testing because testing felt like mistrust, and mistrust felt like hostility. Dependencies got assumed because confirming them felt like pressure, and pressure felt like dominance. Meanwhile, quiet late nights happened because somebody had to keep reality stitched together behind the scenes. Patching gaps became my life, closing issues nobody else even understood, moving invisible boulders uphill. Bragging would be ego, complaining would be resistance, so the only safe move was silence and labor. 2 weeks before deadline, a critical integration failed in the exact way I'd warned about earlier. My warning sat buried in a thread like a time capsule of ignored competence. Tara panicked privately, asked if I could just fix it, and begged to keep escalation quiet. Explained quiet fixes become loud disasters, and Tara said Renee hates bad news more than she hates failure. Tara was trapped because her leadership image depended on pretending everything was fine until the last second. Worked out a compromise, fixed the issue, document the change, and inform stakeholders with a calm plan. Posted the calm plan in the project channel. No blame, just facts and actions, like adults do. Renee reacted within minutes, like she had alerts set for my honesty. She wrote that public escalation creates fear, and we should protect psychological safety by taking concerns offline. The words looked soft, but the meaning was sharp. Shut up. Stop leaving paper trails. Stop making reality visible. Stared at that message and felt something inside me go quiet, like a switch flipping. Deadline week arrived, and the project still wasn't ready. Not even close, no matter how green the slide stayed. Tara reported status as manageable because admitting truth would shatter the narrative Renee built around her. Renee praised resilience, praised trust, praised softness, and reality kept approaching like a train. Failure happened, not as an explosion, but as a slow choke. Requirements unmet, stakeholders confused, leadership annoyed. Urgent meetings spawned instantly, and suddenly outcomes mattered again, but only to assign blame cleanly. Renee looked calm in a strange way, like she'd already chosen the scapegoat. Private meeting appears, me, Tara, Renee, and an HR partner with a sympathetic smile. Renee started by saying she was disappointed in how the project felt, which was insane. She said the team experienced a lack of support from key contributors during critical moments. She said certain behaviors undermined Tara's leadership and created doubt across the group. Asked what behaviors because I wanted the accusation to become something concrete for once. Renee said my documentation and risk notes were subtle forms of control, signaling women must be perfect to be trusted. Tara stared at the table because Tara knew her paycheck depended on Renee's story staying intact. Renee framed the failure as cultural, not technical, because technical is measurable and cultural is infinite. She said we would have succeeded if allyship had been embraced fully, and I felt my jaw tighten. Explained the work I did, late fixes, early warnings, the exact threads, the exact dates, the exact tasks. Renee said overtime does not excuse toxic patterns, and the HR partner nodded like this was therapy. Renee said she received feedback that I withheld support in subtle ways, like not being enthusiastic enough in meetings. Asked who gave that feedback, and she said naming sources is harmful, so I should trust the process. Realized the process was a blender and it only had one output, me as the problem. Solution arrived in the same breath, packaged like kindness wrapped around a demotion. Renee offered a development plan and a role shift into technical support, less influence, less visibility, less ownership. She said it would reduce friction and create room for women's leadership to flourish without male disruption. The word disruption landed because it wasn't about my behavior anymore, it was about my category. Asked how this affected my career path and pay progression, because reality still mattered to me. Renee said focusing on money can reflect entitlement, and we should focus on impact and community. The HR partner smiled harder, like that line was a delicious snack. Asked for the plan in writing because vague meetings become rewritten memories later. Renee said the need for everything in writing can signal distrust and controlling tendencies, and the room got cold. Repeated the request calmly because calm was the only weapon allowed to me, and it still counted as aggression. Meeting ended with "we will reconvene," which is corporate language for "we will decide without you." That night, my private notes looked like an autopsy report on my own career. Evidence existed, reassignment timelines, ignored warnings, ownership games, credit redirection, all neat and clear. Thought about going nuclear, forwarding it to leadership, forcing facts into the light. Then remembered leadership loved Renee's narrative because narratives are easier than admitting management failure. Outcomes already failed, and they still blamed culture, so facts were not the missing ingredient. Chose the boring adult move, update resume, apply quietly, interview like a normal human being. Got an offer not long after. Smaller place, simpler chain of command, less theater, more accountability. Reconvene meeting happens, HR partner returns, Renee slides a document across the table like it's mercy. Document listed goals like practice humility, reduce controlling behaviors, amplify women's voices, accept coaching without defensiveness. New title was flatter, smaller, safely invisible, and it came with fewer opportunities by design. Renee said I could accept the change or pursue a mutual separation, delivered in a soft voice like a lullaby. Asked if this was disciplinary action because words matter, and she said labels are less important than healing. Told her I would not accept the role change calmly without drama, because drama would feed her story. HR partner looked sad like I rejected a gift basket, and Renee said men often resist accountability. Asked for separation terms in writing, and for once she complied because she wanted my exit clean. They offered a small package if I signed a silence clause, the classic "take this and disappear." Refused the silence clause not to be brave, but because silence was the whole point of the machine. Resigned politely, set an end date, handed off what I could, and kept my tone flat and professional. Renee said she hoped I would learn from this experience, and I said I hoped the team would learn to ship. Last week felt like social death, people avoiding eye contact because proximity could stain their careers. Tara sent a message saying she was sorry things got complicated, and I told her I wished her well. Tara wasn't evil. Tara was a pawn that got promoted into pressure and then protected by blame. Final day came, desk got packed, mug, cables, notebook, and the habit of watching my own words. Walked out and felt air hit my face like permission, because I didn't realize how tense I'd become. New job was quieter in the best way. Direct owners, direct questions, direct answers, no ritualized guilt. Sleep returned, appetite returned, and the constant background dread finally shut off. Months passed, and I stopped thinking about Renee until a message showed up from Jess one evening. Jess asked if I had time to talk. Sounded tired, sounded careful, sounded like a person waking up. Call happens, and Jess says the circle started eating itself once the external enemy disappeared. She said Renee needed a scapegoat after the failure, and Tara was too protected to blame. She said accountability got reframed as hostility, and Jess became unsafe for asking basic questions. Jess asked if I still had any notes, any timeline, any proof of how ownership was manipulated. Stared at my old folder and felt that stone in my stomach again, because I knew what giving it meant. Asked Jess if she was sure, because facts inside that system become weapons, and weapons cut everyone. Jess said she was tired of being told feelings beat reality, and she wanted out with her sanity. Sent her a cleaned timeline, removed names where possible, kept structure, dates, and decisions intact. Jess thanked me, and her voice sounded like relief mixed with grief. Weeks later, quiet whispers surfaced about an internal review, not for justice, but because money got nervous. Projects kept slipping, customers got angry, and leadership finally remembered outcomes exist outside slide decks. Review looked at ownership on paper, deadlines missed, risk notes ignored, and patterns of reassignment. Turns out Renee optimized ownership to maximize visibility for her circle and minimized risk reporting to protect the narrative. Leadership didn't call it feminism because leadership never names the real thing. Leadership called it mismanagement. Tara got moved quietly into a smaller scope role, described as a growth reset instead of a consequence. Jess left on her own because staying meant becoming the next scapegoat with a smile. Renee didn't get publicly punished because public punishment makes leadership look foolish for backing her. Instead, she got transitioned into a cross-team culture role, a promotion-shaped exile with a clean exit note. Later saw her online posting about leading change with empathy, building spaces where women aren't questioned by male doubt. The post had applause from strangers who never worked under her because strangers only see the brand. Read it twice felt nothing dramatic, just a cold recognition of how easy it is to sell control as care. Then came the weirdest final twist, not a lawsuit, not revenge, not a downfall, just a quiet loop closing. Months after that, my new team had an opening, and I got pulled into interview panels as a senior voice. Calendar invite showed a candidate, and the name hit me like a familiar smell from an old apartment. Renee walked into the video call with the same calm smile, same polished tone, same certainty. She didn't recognize me at first because I was never a person in her story, just an obstacle she moved. Questions started normal: delivery, prioritization, handling conflict, and she answered with smooth culture language. Asked how she defines accountability when outcomes fail, and her answer was all frameworks and no facts. Asked for a concrete example where she owned a mistake publicly, and she pivoted to shared responsibility. Asked how she handles dissent that is fact-based but uncomfortable, and she said dissent must be trauma-informed. That phrase landed like an old bruise, and my face stayed neutral because I learned that skill the hard way. Panel ended. She smiled, thanked us, said she values inclusive environments, and the call closed quietly. Decision meeting happened after, and I said no, calmly without drama, because drama is how she feeds. I said her answers avoided ownership, and our team needed adults who ship and admit mistakes. The hiring manager nodded because outcomes still mattered here and narratives didn't pay the bills. Renee got rejected politely, probably told we chose another candidate, probably posted later about biased systems. Closed my laptop and felt something rare. Not triumph, not revenge, just clean closure. The machine didn't crush her, and I didn't crush her. I just refused to join her story again. Weird Ending sits quietly because the real win wasn't watching her fall, it was never needing her approval. Lesson stays simple and ugly. Competence can be used against you when someone needs you small for their rise. Another lesson stays sharper. The most dangerous power isn't loud. It's calm, smiling, and convinced your reality is optional.